Hi, good day, everybody. I'm Jason,
And I'm Josh.
and we're here for the DBA Insights. We're going to be going over a couple of our research and are moving towards dissertation, but this is more of our uh, rapid evidence assessments for DBA 850. And we're going to be going over each of our presentations that we did during residency to give you guys kind of an overview and an insight of what to look forward to for you guys. I'm going to start in episode 1 here with my presentation. Let me see if I can't share the screen here. Here we go. This is an overview of a poster, what you guys may be able to develop when you guys are in 850 as well. And where's it? Oh, there it is. Okay. So my topic, or the title of my REA was Death by Overwork, Contingency Leadership Approach to Incorporating Work-Life Balances in Japan. And basically, the purpose of this study was to focus on Japan's persistent death by overwork business practice, which is called karoshi. And, the problem is due to pretty much recent government regulations pushing for reducing the work-life or to increase work-life balance and reduce working hours and give access to people to actually take their annual leave and whatnot has been thrust into the spotlight now again. So yeah.
Hey Jason, just wondering, do you have any like personal reasons for looking into this topic?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I experienced it, which may be a little biased, to get that out there in front to identify what my bias may be. But I worked in the Japanese business sector for 15 years plus, and actually fell victim to a bit of karoshi. I didn't die from overworking, but I actually had health complications and stuff that arose from running myself ragged, working over 70 hours a week, for several weeks, sometimes days at a time without even coming back home, So yeah, definitely personal.
Gotcha. So gotcha. You're saying so this ties back into a real world management problem then that you yourself have experienced. All right, cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So I chose to look at the problem through contingency leadership lens, because it's been, there's in my paper, I do a literature review about, how Ouchi's theory Z developed from Maslow's and from McGregor's theories, really cut down the barriers between the company and the private life. And that's when you saw a real constraint and focus on Japanese workers to be, working really long hours for the company and taking very, very little leave. So my research question was, what contingency leadership strategies used by senior mid-level managers support or inhibit the work-life balance that impact organizational performance in Japanese firms? And one of the reviewers said, why organizational performance was in there. And organizational performance is one of the big things, if not the biggest thing, that Japanese people or Japanese managers and senior leadership focus on. No matter what you present to them, no matter which article, they're going to say, hey, how is this going to affect performance? And that goes back to, when Deming came over here to revamp the work production methods that were going on after World War II. They changed to an overall organizational performance focused society in business, and that led into the Toyota Motors company's development of their performance mechanisms and stuff like that. And anyway, but Yeah, just to take a look at the theoretical framework part of this presentation that we did in residency. I really tried to incorporate the initial concept to the CMO, which followed my research question. And as pointed out by Josh, one of my reviewers in 850 here of my paper, when I'm going through this, I want to spell out all these things here. So I went back and in my actual final revised version, I spell out work-life balance there. But Japanese firms is the context, senior to middle-level managers, how they can help impact the problem of desired work-life balance. And then interventions is the resources that the firm has on hand, environmental variables like maybe pressure from the government or whatnot. And there's internal and external environment variables, but I don't want to get too far into that. The management variables, or technically management is a variable. I mean, your managers, say your mid-level managers, are a variable for senior leadership to have them direct the organization and choose and select the goals that you want to accomplish. And then getting to the mechanism part, which is basically going to be your results, but the selection of which form of leadership that they want to take, means decentralized or centralized. Decentralized has more open, they give more of the power to the employee to go ahead and exercise any incorporation of the work-life balance practices. They'll see more support from the leadership in that context, I believe. But centralized leadership is more micromanaged and focused and structured, and has a hierarchical structure that is pretty much what everybody in Japan uses to this day. So getting them to switch their mindset to decentralized may be a bit of a challenge, and that's kind of why I'm addressing this as one of the gaps in the literature that I find out there. So incorporating the work-life balances, and how does those incorporations affect the overall outcome of organizational performance. Just quickly, the method process, which we're all really aware of, evidence-based research. How do you get from evidence-based research to the practical implications of it? Evidence-based management.
Yeah, I know. Earlier you had mentioned the REA though. So how does that tie into this evidence-based management? I mean, what's an REA?
Rapid evidence assessment is basically a cut down, quick version of a systematic review, which basically in REA, you pull data from whatever search that you're looking for, whatever problem that you're trying to address, and then you evaluate the critical appraisal process, whichever one you select.
Okay, it looks like you picked the MMAT here. Gotcha. Right. Okay.
MMAT, because I had qualitative and quantitative data that I want to do, and I think it manages a better set of questions that are not specific to, but generalized across those articles, which make them more comparable per se.
Gotcha.
And that goes to the articles that I did include in my data set, which were, global. I don't know if I still have this. Oh, there. Yeah, I do. The data set. And, 3 quantitative, 11 quantitative. And that's kind of why I used the MMATs, because I had multiple things. But I didn't want to take data just from Japan. I wanted to include other perspectives to kind of give a global view of the picture. So I had a couple from North and South America, Europe, one global workforce on a whole. It was, I want to say the OECD or an Asian study on the whole, and it took into account countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, when it was part of, when it wasn't part of China, and other countries throughout there. But mostly the 10 articles out of the data set, I wanted to focus specifically on Japan, because that's my primary
Did you notice much difference between the Asian and Japan articles and then kind of the other four, like where they're, like almost like a straight line, like you could tell, oh, this is definitely like
Well,
North America, this is
well,
Japan.
yeah, there are definitely the cultural aspects and the more progressive themes that came out of the Northern and South American concepts. And there was one study in the South American concept, which was a family-owned business, and how their leadership was trying to use contingency theory to implement some work-life balance into the company and stuff. And it's a very different mindset and structural, process within the organizations that make it a challenge for Japanese and Asian societies and cultures and businesses to adapt to these work-life balance, concepts. So, and I, wanted to keep in there, regional workforces, large firms, and small to medium enterprises to give it a mix of the data set. But which led me to the critical appraisal process. But just to quickly go through it, these were the top 3 that I thought rated, even though these are 86s, these related more towards the Japanese, exactly the research question that I was basing them on. So that's why I took those. And I think that the quantitative studies actually revealed, or, more coincided with the research question per se in the topic I'm examining. That's not to say I do like, in the beginning, I didn't value the qualitative as much as I did the quantitative. When we started out in like 800, 810, I thought everything was more quantitative. And man, I really learned the difference between that using Circwall and whatnot now, which you will see the Circwall process down here. But yeah, my coding process, which I can't emphasize enough, learning how to code properly the first time through Atlas TI, because I went in to Atlas TI and I would put my codes in, and I had so many codes which were my raw codes that I didn't lump them together into certain codes yet, and I had to go back and redo the entire process, which took time. But yeah, it's you want to lump them first in the articles, and then before you even start using any of the data processes and stuff like that. But yeah, I created codes, first level codes, and then categories based on that, following Saldana's 2013 book, which I have, but there's the 2020 book out now, which has a graphic that I wish I would incorporate it in here, that has a streamline across, kind of shows how to develop the codes and themes, categories and themes from there. But another key thing about coding for me was I was coding each article separately, but then I had to combine the codes from all the articles across the data set to make those original first codes, which I wasn't doing. And I found out where my errors was, and I went back, and that's what I had to correct and whatnot. But this is the anticipated findings were the codes that are the themes that were apparent across the thematical analysis, or across the data set there. And even though these were only 3, well, I mean, let's start over here. Organizational performance, it's the key concept that Japanese people are always looking at, and you'll see it in all the research in Japan, and it has to deal with, sorry about that. And you'll see that it has to deal with, it relates to everything that they're looking for. So that'll be
quick question. I think that ding meant question, actually.
Okay.
So how, and I think you started to get into this, but organizational performance, like what is that? Money organizational performance? Is that goal? Like what?
It's more of the concept of Kaizen, which is continual performance, always seeking that continual performance, which I actually address in my literature review of the paper now. And this Kaizen philosophy, and anybody who knows Lean or Six Sigma stuff, they know the concept of Kaizen. But it's always continually, seeking to improve upon your organizational performance. And that means that you're always, in a sense, innovating or looking for opportunities to innovate where you can. And they'll have a big, there's a Kaizen Kanban, but I don't want to go into it too much, but where each member of the workforce, they'll have their groups, right? Say you have a task group that's a manufacturing plant and you're making bicycles, right? There's one team that comes in and puts the spokes of the wheel together and then assembles it onto the bike or whatnot. This team will say, we have the most problems, and they'll stick their problem areas and the places that they do good up on the board on, just imagine little yellow stickies, and they'll be able to start to see where that people are having problems and people are not. And then in the next group, say the frame people that are welding the frame together, they'll put theirs up, and then you'll start to see where areas that you can improve and areas that are doing great. You want to just keep reinforcing those. And that's kind of the Kaizen Kanban, which is sign or board, I guess you'd translate it to. So yeah, method that they're always seeking performance. Now, profitability is a measure of performance, but it's not performance. That's one of the concepts that they really stress. And the next one here, as you see, the themes, contingency leadership showed up quite a bit. But I was conducting my search on contingency leadership, so I'm not surprised to see that per se. But implying these contingency leadership themes come from articles, are themes apparent across the data set, but come from the articles and show how a contingency leadership or lens that you view the problem in can be solved, and giving options to the senior management and whatnot to develop work-life balance practices to implement in Japanese businesses. So the last two, work-life balance and Japanese business practices, they were in there, but the ones that they needed, this maybe justifies the need for further research into this incorporation of contingency leadership to work-life balance, because only two actually kind of coincided in that area, kind of went from contingency leadership approach to actually implementing the work-life balances into the Japanese businesses. So, I mean, there definitely is a gap there, and that's why this REA may signify the need for a full systematic review of the process.
Gotcha. What are your confidence in those findings? Or,
that's why we're coming down to the confidence level of CircWall, right? And I know we're kind of running out of time, but I'll just take the first one. CircWall, we were introduced to it in 840 at residency, and I love this diagram, and I mean, not the diagram, but the process. And we had Dr. Sherlock come in and explain it to us, and he was very energetic about it. And going through this process and actually identifying where and which articles back up the first theme of organizational performance was actually backed up by all these articles, and the methodological limitations, the coherence, adequacy, relevancy, and you go through this cycle or this process, and you can really come away with some increases to your confidence or medium confidence being shown, and why. As the relevance, the scope. Let's just take work-life balance, because it was on the lower end. I only have a little bit of confidence because the scope of the three articles was. The scope of the Article 3, being that it went over 34 different countries, reduced the relevance to the confidence of the findings as it pertains to my review question, right? So, it didn't exactly relate. That's why the confidence in that finding wasn't weighted as high. But I mean, that's just one example. CircWall does give pretty good method of going through it and getting to it. Now, I walked you through the theoretical framework, the initial one. I just wanted to throw this in there because, we're running out of time, but this is where, you need some kind of method or adapting, to incorporate your findings. And what I found was, it seems the lack that they're not making the transition from the leadership approach to the actual implementation. So that's why to get to this outcome of organizational performance, you need to test which leadership approach, say you use decentralized to incorporate work-life balances at this particular moment. That's like contingency theory is all based on you making leadership decisions and whatnot based on what you have available at the time, being your resources and environment and all that. So say at this point in time, you have the resources and the environment is, available to take a decentralized approach, which is a little bit easier to incorporate these work-life balances, say remote working or telework. That's what we say, remote or telework, or maybe just reduce schedules, to allow the employees to set their own schedule just to get the project done, not really a time card, clock in, clock out kind of situation. So that being, you record your outcomes to organizational performance using either a Kaizen Kanban or the plan, do, check, act, Deming method. But, after you record these in a database, this is the component, the database is what I'm introducing as new. And I would think that this is one of the key things is one of the key takeaways from this research is if you could implement a database that records the leadership performance and the outcomes that happened from choosing that particular leadership framework or initiative, which incorporated the work-life balance, you'd come away with greater knowledge for the next time that you have a similar situation. You can say, hey, this worked. We can incorporate work-life balances. So we have the same variables, same things happening. Let's keep going this direction. And if it didn't work, well, maybe we need to pull it back a little bit. Maybe the employees got a little crazy, took a little too far or something like that. Maybe we come to the centralized structure this time, and then record the effects on it and what you specifically did. And, you want to take a look at it like, the evaluation, you make an evaluation of the performance of the leadership approach. And then, which encompasses all these things, the chosen leadership approach, the outcome to the customer, the end user, the work-life balance. Did it actually increase work-life balance? Did it hinder it? Because, well, I don't want to get too far into it, but yeah, and then just record the overall success of those, successes or failures, and have it for the next time that you need to make another decision about that. So this was a walkthrough of my poster, and I wish I could stay to the 10-minute limit that they give you during these present. And I know it's going to be even more so in the future for our dissertation. So I'm really looking forward to the process, but I really got to be able to say all this data much more concise and quickly. I know that.
Hey, Jason, I wanted to thank you for your time, though. I mean, going through, not just your topic area, but also the detail that you went into and describing, your method and the REA process. It really kind of gave a good overview. And, I think this can, really benefit people down the road to just kind of get an idea of, the evidence-based management in this REA process. So again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we, look forward to seeing what happens in the next episode of our podcast when we go over Josh's. All right. Have a good one.